In this video, I'm going to show you how to find land that owes property taxes. Now, the reason why this is important is that the people who stop paying property taxes pretty much already raise their hand and say, I don't want this thing anymore. I'm fed up with paying property taxes. I'm willing to walk away from this property for literally nothing. So as a result, what we're looking at here is pieces of land or real estate with the most motivated of all motivated sellers. So in other words, you want the best deals, tax delinquent properties is the way to go. And I'm going to show you in this video exactly how to find them, how to pull the lists, and how to use them to get the best deals. So what is tax delinquent real estate? Tax delinquent real estate is very simply pieces of real estate, land, houses, any kind of real estate, where the owners have stopped paying property taxes. In the United States, what happens is when somebody doesn't pay the property taxes, there's actually two paths that are being taken by the state. Path one is what's called a tax lien auction process, and path two is a tax deed auction process. In the tax lien auction process, the state basically says, hey, I don't want to wait for my money. I'm all being owed $2,000 in property taxes on this property. I want this money now. So what they're doing is they're issuing a lien against the property and then putting up an auction where they sell that lien to the public. So you can attend these auctions and buy those liens. And then if the owner doesn't pay those property taxes off for a certain number of years, you can actually then foreclose on that property. Well, the second way is that the state says, you know what, I'm not going to mess with the tax liens. I'm just going to wait for a while. And they wait several years, and then the state forecloses on the property, or in states like California, they get a right to sell the property and then go sell the actual property at an auction. Now, here's the problem. These auctions have a lot of competition. There's a lot of people attending these tax lien auctions. There's a lot of the people attending these tax deed auctions. And as a result, getting deals at these auctions is very, very hard. But there's a better way to actually get properties with back taxes. And as a matter of fact, there's three ways to get the list of all properties that owe the property taxes. Now, the first one is you simply go get the tax lien list or the tax deed list. But instead of attending the auction, you actually send those owners a letter. Because again, they're sitting at home, they're sick and tired of the property, they don't care about this deal anymore, they just want to get rid of the burden of property ownership. They basically have raised their hand and publicly declared that they just don't want to pay this anymore, and they're walking away from the property. So in theory, shouldn't they be willing to therefore be willing to sell those properties for just pennies on the dollar if you just get a hold of them? And so instead of attending the auction, just simply write them a letter. So how do you get the tax lien or tax deed list? You simply contact the county and ask them for that list of what's coming up for the auction. There's also several websites that you can subscribe to that have aggregated that for the entire United States. And in those websites, for a subscription fee, you can see which auction is coming up when, and you can download those lists right there for a fee. And then what happens is then you need to go and get the mailing addresses from those owners. And again, you can do that by subscribing to yet another data source, like, for example, a data tree or CoreLogic or so, and then basically merge, aggregate this data. You know who doesn't pay property taxes. Now you aggregate the addresses with it. You have it both together, and you send them a direct mail letter, and they're very, very often willing to sell those properties before the auction for literally 10 or 20, 30 cents on the dollar. The second way is you don't mess with the tax lien and tax deed list, because the tax lien and tax deed list only have what's coming up for auction right now. So if you think about it, in the typical state, it takes about 5 years of non-payment of property taxes before a property comes up for a tax deed auction. Or in a tax lien state, when a tax lien comes up for auction, it's already delinquent, usually 2 years, and then it takes another 3 years before 2 to 5 years, and actually different states are different rules, but on average, let's say of 3 years before you can even foreclose on that. So in other words, what shows up at the auction is really, in the tax deed world, only the ones that have already 5 years of back taxes, or in the tax lien world, those that already have 2 years of back taxes, and the ones that came up for auction the year before and that have 3, 4, 5 years of back taxes are not visible. So in other words, when you go get the tax lien or the tax deed list, you're only getting a small segment of what is actually tax delinquent. So the better way, and that is method number 2, is to go to the county, contact the Treasury Department or the Tax Collectors Department, and ask them for what's called the delinquent tax roll. The delinquent tax roll is a list of every property owner that owes property taxes. Now, the best part is when you ask for that, you can ask for it with parcel number, you can ask for it with information of how much they owe, and most importantly, with the mailing address of that owner. So in one swoop from the county for perhaps a couple of $100, you get a list with everyone that owes property taxes, and now all you need to do is, boom, send them a piece of direct mail, say, hey, you owe property taxes. Would you like to sell a property to me? I'm willing to buy this property and relieve you from the burden of property ownership. Boom, right there, you got a shortcut to all the tax delinquent properties. The third way you can get this property list is actually the easiest way and the best way. I saved the best for last. The third way is that you go and actually subscribe to one of these services that I already mentioned, like DataTree, like CoreLogic, and so on, because they actually now, and they didn't have that 5 or 10 years ago, but today they have it. They have already the ability for you to pull that delinquent tax roll, that list of all the property owners that owe property taxes directly from their database. So no need to go to the tax collector. No need to go and get the tax lien or tax deed list and combine them and go through all this kind of data aggregation. Simply subscribe to one of these services and then go in and say, I want in this county, I want all the properties that owe property taxes. And right there, for a monthly fee of sometimes just $100 or $200, you can actually get all those pieces of data downloaded right to your computer with mailing address, with assessed value, with market value in some cases, with mailing address, with legal description, everything you possibly need. Technology has made tax delinquent real estate investment so simple, it's absolutely ridiculous. Michelle and I had to go down to the county, literally get a rental car, drive there or fly there, take a hotel, go meet at the county, knock on doors, find the IT guy of that county, and then explain to them what we wanted, then get approvals from other department heads, then get an extract done, which he then gave us on a CD, and then we would go home and we had what we're looking for. Today, you simply go to CoreLogic, DataTree, or many of the other services and say, I want tax delinquent data, download it right there, and you're ready to go. But the key of this method is, the key of this way is, don't just get the tax delinquent data, then instead don't use it to attend the auction where you're fighting with all these people, with all this competition. Instead, use it as a direct mail strategy, because the people that have actually not paid their property taxes, as I said multiple times already, are the most motivated of motivated sellers in the market. They have pretty much said already and publicly announced it by not paying property taxes that they either don't have the money and they need money, that they're either said that they're sick and tired of the property and they don't want it anymore. They are sick and tired of the burden of property ownership. They just don't want to pay those property taxes anymore. They have inherited the property and they just don't care about it and they don't want to pay this kind of stuff. And bottom line is, they just don't, they're not just motivated, they're what we call the non-wanters. They just don't care, and they're willing to therefore give you the steepest discounts on the land. Use this strategy and thank me later. So if you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to know more about how to get land, tax delinquent or non-tax delinquent, then simply go to landblueprint.com and download a free 30-day blueprint showing you exactly how you can start your land business from home, whether we're tax delinquent or non-tax delinquent. Because here's the secret. For every 1 tax delinquent properties, there's 95 non-tax delinquent where the owners are paying the property taxes and they still want to get rid of these properties at pennies on the dollar. All right, see you in the next video.